Hastings. He'll explain.
The reason I've come to Hastings, Jeremy, is the famous battle that took place here. No, not that little skirmish with William the Conqueror. As every schoolboy know, that actually took place 6 miles inland. No, I'm talking about the time Tony the Conqueror stuck one in the eye of the Tories.
Not quite since 1066, but very nearly, Hastings was always a Conservative stronghold. And then, in 1997, there was a sea change. What happened was partly a landslide in favour of Tony Blair, but the other element was an anti-Conservative tactical voting push. 13 years on, what's happened to those voters who voted against the Conservatives? Might they now be about to turn on Gordon Brown?
Michael Foster, how are you doing?
All right, thank you, yeah.
Confusingly, there were 2 Labour MPs called Michael Foster in the last House of Commons. There would only have been one had not large numbers of Liberal Democrat voters supported the Labour candidate in Hastings and Rye in 1997.
The British electorate are very sensible people. They know when you've got a two-way marginal as here. They know that their vote counts most if they make a choice between the first 2 parties. And that will happen all over the country. And in consequence, I think the Tories are in trouble because their extremist policies in many respects are not acceptable to the majority of this nation. And that's why I think tactical voting will happen. And I think it could well yet now defeat the Tories' ambitions.
Labour, though, weren't always in the hunt in Hastings and Rye. In 1992, they came 3rd behind the Lib Dems. Then, the Sunday before Election Day in 1997, The Observer published a poll saying that Labour were actually best placed to defeat the Conservatives. The Liberal Democrats still remember what could have been if that poll hadn't been published. But they take heart, something similar could happen again.
Well, I think the calculation is that they don't like Labour, they don't like Gordon Brown's Labour, and they don't trust the Conservatives. And I think it is very appropriate that you're down in Hastings on the day when the Liberal Democrats launched their manifesto, because Nick Clegg's saying at a national level that actually the wasted vote is the vote for the other 2 that will give you another 65 years of more or less the same old corrupt politics.
But although the Lib Dem candidate may think that his party has convinced new voters to get on board, pollsters believe that in general something else is happening nationwide, which is benefiting the Conservatives. They're doing better in marginal seats than their national share of the vote would suggest.
The Conservative premium in their target Labour seats, the reason why they're getting a bigger swing in those seats is, I think, a political phenomenon. It's basically because of the unwinding of tactical voting. Lib Dems going back home rather than lending their votes to Labour as they did at the last 3 elections.
The Conservative candidate in Hastings and Rye out canvassing today. Such a disproportionate swing in marginal seats like this one could be worth 30 to 40 seats to David Cameron. Or, to put it another way, possibly the difference between a hung parliament and an outright majority. But what about anti-Labour tactical voting? After all, they have been in government for 13 years.
I don't detect any particular evidence of tactical voting. Mostly people seem to be saying to us, we're either going to vote Labour, because we always have and we're not inclined to change, or they're saying, I think I will change this time. But if they're thinking about changing, they're not necessarily going to go all the way to Conservative, or indeed to Lib Dems. Sometimes the only sort of form of tactical voting I hear about is people who used to be committed Labourites thinking maybe I won't come out.
The possible unwinding of tactical voting is one reason it's wise to treat national polls with their projected national share of the vote with a bit of caution. The election will be decided not by totting up the votes nationally, but by individual contests in marginal seats, somewhere national pollsters struggle to give a detailed and up-to-date picture.
David Grossman there. This is the list of those who've indicated they'll be standing in Hastings. And joining us now is Lord Reynard, architect of many a tactical voting-based Liberal Democrat by-election victory, and from Swansea we'll be joined in a moment or 2 by the Welsh Secretary Peter Hain. Apparently you can hear us, can you, Peter Hain?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me, Jeremy?
Yep, you're a bit echoey, but we can hear you fine. Thanks very much. Now, Lord Reynard, would you be advising